Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show alongside Andrew Simonson. I'm Alec Etheredge, and it's another week, Andrew. We've got a busy one ahead this week, and we're starting to hit that home stretch of the 2023 high school football season. But before we jump in to a big week ahead, let's look back at last week. And last week, to me, one of the biggest weeks of the season so far when you look at the results that we got, especially with the playoff picture starting to take shape and some of those region crowns starting to take shape a little bit. We saw Thompson and Helena with some big wins last Friday night as they take over sole possession of first place in their respective regions. We also saw some big wins beyond that. Spain Park looking to keep their playoff hopes alive. Obviously, we're here at Spain Park this week for that very reason. But beyond that, Pelham with a big win as well. And then you look down the line there, Montevallo with another 21-20 win, the second week in a row that they win by 1 point, and the Vincent Yellow Jackets back on the winning track as well. So when you look back at all of that, a very busy week. It was kind of an underrated week to me. But when you look back at all those results, what is it that stood out to you the most last week, Andrew?
I think it was Spain Park coming out and getting the win against Tuscaloosa County in the way that they did. I expected that to be a bit of a closer game, and I didn't really know what the Spain Park offense was going to look like. Obviously, with some pieces still coming back, but with a healthy Reggie Jackson back, this Jags lineup looks ridiculously good and very strong in both the offensive and defensive categories. It was just such a statement win on the road in a tricky road game against Tuscaloosa County, and I think that win has a lot of confidence going for Spain Park for the rest of the way, getting that first region win out of the way, and a pretty solid run-in for Jags going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a huge win for Spain Park. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Going into that bye week was going to be crucial for them to get healthy, and then coming back a week later to take on a Tuscaloosa County team that they really had to beat to kind of keep those playoff hopes alive. And they're able to walk away with not just a win, but the defense played extremely well. And like you said, those offensive weapons being back on that side of the football turned this team up a notch into a new level. And that's something that's going to bode well for them moving forward, including a big game here this Friday night as they host the Chelsea Hornets. We're going to talk a little bit about that one, a huge game there. But just looking beyond that last week, you look at Thompson and Helena now. Those are two games that I want to touch on real quick before we jump ahead to this week. Both of them in different circumstances there. Thompson goes out and just absolutely demolishes Hewitt-Trussville for that top spot in the region at this point. And I'm not sure that many of us expected it to be that much of a blowout. And then on the other end, you've got Helena in a very tight battle, a team that's very physical, has done what they needed to do so far this season, and they're challenged. Really one of those first games this year where they've had to face some adversity. They come out of the locker room. We saw it against Homewood earlier in the year, and they bounced back. Well, they faced that adversity, that halftime deficit 21-14 against Briarwood, and they bounced back with a big second half, and they go on to win that one. So now you've got those two teams sitting atop their region standings. Take me through your thoughts on what they've got ahead now and the confidence that these two teams are going to be playing with the rest of the season now.
Yeah, and for Thompson, they have to feel pretty good about their chances at winning the region title, considering that most of the challenges are already out of the way. They faced the other two of the likely top three in the region in Vestavia Hills and Hewitt-Trussville, still potentially facing that 4 seed down the road if Hoover or Tuscaloosa County winds up sliding into that spot, having already beaten Spain Park, one of the other teams in the mix for that spot, as well as Chelsea as well. So you have to really like it as a Thompson fan, looking at your outlook for the rest of the season. Really just seeing it now as preparation for the playoffs, which is a lot of what Coach Freeman views the regular season as, but now this stretch can be seen even more so as a good preparation, trying to figure out the last little bit of kinks on the offense and defense, just to really get this train rolling ahead of potentially a big postseason run for the Warriors. And as for Helena, I think that was really the statement that they needed to show we are a legitimate 7-0 team. We are legitimately the top team within this region, and they have to feel incredible about themselves going into the rest of the season. Obviously, still having to play both Ben Russell and some of the other challenging teams that they've got to face the rest of that way as well. But I think that honestly, that Helena has to feel really confident about their chances at a region title now, and it's like Thompson as well. They can really just use this as preparation for the playoffs.
Yeah, building off of kind of what you just said about both those teams and what they have left, you look at Helena and building off of that, they get a bye week this week, and then it's Calera, and then it's Ben Russell. If they beat Calera, they guarantee themselves a home playoff game in one of those top two seeds, and then it likely comes down to that game against Ben Russell for the region championship. But Ben Russell's got some tough games before that matchup too, and we're going to talk about one of them here shortly with Pelham on Thursday night traveling to Benjamin Russell. So this is a Helena team with this bye week and a win over Calera. They could lock up the region championship here in 2 weeks, and they've been the best team in this region consistently so far this season. But being on a bye week, I wanted to touch on them real quick in that Briarwood game, and Jordan Washington again. I mean, he goes for over 200 yards on the ground, a big performance from him yet again. But the defense just making big-time play after big-time play. You don't turn the football over 4 times very often and win a football game, but guess what? Their defense also forced 4 turnovers and had a huge night as well. Nate Thomason coming up with some big-time plays, an interception that sealed the game there at the end, also a fumble recovery that he had. And this defense with guys like him, Joseph Roberto, several others, this is a defense that's really stout, playing some great football right now, and they made the big-time plays that they had to in that game, blocking a kick as well. Just several plays in that game where the defense really stepped up. And Briarwood probably the second-best team in this region so far this season. We'll talk a little bit more about them a little bit later on as well. That's an improved football team right there. But as for Thompson, the talent showed up. And we talked about how confident we were and how calm that team seemed after a loss to Clay Chalkville. And I think it's because they realized we're not going to face a team as physical as this, as fast as this, the rest of the way. And that showed on the field on Friday night against Hewitt-Trussville. Hewitt didn't have that same speed, that same physicality that Thompson faced against Clay Chalkville, and Thompson, it showed. I mean, that the way you look at what freshman quarterback Trent Seaburn was able to do in that game, just continuing to impress, had a huge night. The offense rolled up points, and they pulled away in a dominant game. We'll talk a little bit more about them here shortly as they head into a matchup at Oak Mountain this week. So that kind of gives us a recap on last week, but we've got another big week ahead this week, 10 total football games taking place. A lot of region action, and we start with a Thursday night game this week as Pelham hits the road to Benjamin Russell in a game that could have some big-time playoff implications. We're going to start with that one here in just a second. Then we're going to jump down and go through the rest of our games, including that game right here at Spain Park High School as the Jaguars going to play host to the Chelsea Hornets in what's going to be a key region showdown for both of these teams, but especially Spain Park as they look to chase down a possible playoff spot this season. So we're going to jump in right now. We're going to start with Pelham hitting the road this Thursday to take on Benjamin Russell. Well, that takes us to our Thursday night game that we have this week, Andrew, and this is going to be a big one. When you look at these two teams, I mean, it could come down to this matchup to determine who gets in the playoff as Pelham hits the road to take on Benjamin Russell. And Pelham coming off a big 35-6 win at home against Calera. That defense continuing to play well and continuing to bounce back from those 2 losses early in region play to Briarwood and Helena. Now they've got 2 consecutive wins, play well against Chelsea on both sides of the ball, and now have played well against Calera on both sides of the ball. But this is going to be their toughest test since those 2 straight losses, sitting at 4-2 overall, getting a Benjamin Russell team that's been playing well, and 4-2 overall also, coming off a 50-7 win over Chilton County. So both these teams, a little bit of confidence coming into this matchup on Thursday night. And more importantly, you look at the region standings right now. Benjamin Russell sitting at 2-1 in region play, Pelham sitting at 1-2 in region play. So this is huge. I mean, if you can even that up, if you're Pelham and both of these teams are 2-2 in region play and Pelham's got the tiebreaker, that's going to go a long way toward their chances of making the playoffs. If they don't do that, then they're going to be on the outside looking in right now. It's going to be a tough battle to climb uphill. Some winnable games the rest of the way after this, but you need this win if you want to get into the playoffs. So, Andrew, how do they make that happen? If you're Pelham, what's going to be the big key here to be able to go on the road, short week of work on a Thursday night into a hostile environment and be able to pick up a win?
I think the key is going to have to be limiting Ben Russell's offense, as the offense has scored 35.8 points per game throughout the season. Obviously been very high scoring so far against, albeit some lighter competition. They haven't faced the true meat of their schedule yet, as they have Briarwood and Helena still remaining. But this is a Ben Russell team that has really impressed a lot of people so far throughout the early stretch of the season and has really established itself as one of the playoff hopefuls within this region as well. So for Pelham to come out and get this win, they're going to have to limit that offense of Ben Russell, but also be able to come out and establish some of the offense of their own. We've seen over the past couple of weeks what this offense can look like once it gets going, but really it's going to be a difficult task to get to potentially outscore this Ben Russell team, this might actually have the makings of a shootout, honestly, with the offenses that both of these teams have shown. Defense is both strong for these units as well, but it's really offenses where both of these teams shine.
So which offense do you think does come out, make the better? Like you said, both these defenses playing well this season, so which one does come out, make the plays to win, especially down? I think it's going to be close going into the second half, but down the stretch, who's going to make the plays to win this one?
And I agree with you. I think this is going to be a close one, potentially a coin flip either way, but I'm really leaning towards this Pelham team being able to come in here, get this win. Both these teams coming in here with momentum, but I think Pelham has more momentum to want to come out and prove themselves in another region game and reestablish themselves as one of the playoff teams within this region. I think if you look at the remainder of their schedule with Homewood and Chilton County coming up, I think that they really think that if they get this win, they can propel themselves the rest of the way and really finish strong and get one of those playoff spots going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, I've been back and forth on this one. I have in my notes here at the very end that I think Pelham's going to win because of some of those key playmakers they have. But as you talk, I almost start to think, man, this is a tough spot. It is a tough game going on the road on a Thursday, far trip down south to take on Benjamin Russell. It's got one of those weird feelings to it being a Thursday night game in an environment like that makes it a little bit more difficult to pick. But when you look at the numbers for these two teams, I really like the physicality of what Pelham's defense plays with. And I know you talked about the offense as kind of being what possibly makes the difference in this game, but I think this could be a lower scoring game than people think just because of what you see defensively from Pelham, and they've got that confidence back. And for 2 weeks, they lost it against Briarwood and Helena, and then they got it back. You saw it against Chelsea. You saw it last week against Calera. Neither of those teams great offensively, but it got them the confidence that they needed. And when you look at the guys that they've got out there on that side of the football, very physical, playing confident. To me, going on the road, defense is going to be a big part of if you want to be successful. But they are going to have to slow down a very good Benjamin Russell offense, like you said, scoring 35 points per game. But at the end of the day, I think that Pelham's offense also going to be able to make those plays. They're going to have to run the ball, and that's one thing that they've struggled with consistently outside of Clayton Maines being able to run it from the quarterback position, but he just looks so comfortable throwing the ball the last couple of weeks. He's putting some good touch on the football. I think that and his presence out there as a leader on this offense combined with that physicality defensively bodes well for a team like this on the road, the experience and confidence that they have going into this matchup. So I am on the same page as you. I think that Pelham can do enough to win a very, very tight game. I mean, it could be 20-17, 17-14. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. I think this one's really going to be a good football game, and Pelham needs it. They need it a little bit more, and that can go a long way. As long as they don't use that to be nervous and they use that for motivation to come out and outwork the other team, it's going to bode well for them. I think that is the difference in the game to combine with what they've got physically on both sides of the ball as well. So a Pelham win from both of us. We'll see how it unfolds on Thursday night down at Benjamin Russell. Our game of the week going to take place right here at Spain Park High School this Friday night as the Jaguars welcome the Chelsea Hornets in a county and region battle. And Andrew, looking at this Spain Park team, they got exactly what they needed. Coming off the bye week, we've talked about it the last few weeks leading up to this. They hit a tough stretch going into that bye week. They were injured. They had a lot of guys out, but they had that bye week that they were pointing toward. Head coach Tim Vakakis talked about it several times, like that's the week we're waiting for. We're waiting for that week to get everybody healthy, get prepared for that second half where we feel like we can make a run. And sure enough, they came out last week, and boy, did they look good. Against Tuscaloosa County on the road, they put together a big-time statement win, 35-14 against the Wildcats. And it was in all facets. The defense played well. You look at what the offense was able to do, having Reggie Jackson back, having the Shanks brothers back. This is a team that if they stay healthy the rest of the way, that offensive talent that they have combined with that defense is going to be scary. And now it really becomes just about staying in the moment, playing week by week, because they should be the better matchup or better team in this matchup against Chelsea on Friday night when you look at these two teams on paper and the confidence that they come in with. So it's really just about staying in the moment at this point in time.
And I completely agree with you that Spain Park definitely comes in as the better team with more momentum because of that result last week against Tuscaloosa County. I was really finding it hard to see a way where Spain Park could get into the playoffs if they didn't get that win last week. And showing up in a must-win situation on the road, so far away from home like that, absolutely key and absolutely crucial for the Jags this season. So good on them for getting the win last week, but they still have to stay the course for the rest of the way, because while some of the games are winnable down the stretch, they still have to come out and win and show up and get those games in their favor. So I think that ultimately it's that offense that needs to continue to click, needs to continue to show why they are one of the playoff contenders in this region. Just that passing game continuing to be diverse, along with the Shanks brothers in the backfield. This is a very good Spain Park team that I got to see earlier in the season and loved when all the players were on the field together and what they could do together as a unit. And seeing them all back again, it just really brings me a lot of confidence going into the rest of the way for the season. And the defense can just be absolute playmakers on the line and in the secondary, just wherever you want to on the field. This is a really good and talented Spain Park team. It's always been more talented than what the record's shown, but this year especially.
What about the other side of this matchup? You look at Chelsea, and it's been weird. At times we've seen the potential that they can have. Carter Dotson's made some big-time plays. This past week, Nick Zielinski goes over 100 yards receiving. Couple of quarterbacks playing the game for Chelsea in that one. But you just see a little bit of those moments that they can kind of shine through, and that offense shows its potential. But they've been down Emerson Russell at the running back position, and he, for the longest time, was this offense this year. And going into a matchup like this, whether he plays or not, it feels like they're going to be one-dimensional. If he's there, they're going to run the football. If he's not, then they're going to have to try to throw it with the quarterback. And when you look at that, you're going up against a good defense. What does Chelsea have to be able to do in this matchup to have a chance in this big game? Really just get some confidence here down the stretch.
I think it's going to have to start with the defense and limiting those offensive playmakers that we just talked about. Give your offense a chance to do something within this game, and then just go out and make big plays. That's exactly what needs to happen for this Chelsea team. Because it's like we talked about earlier and throughout the season. This is a good and solid Chelsea team that hasn't really had the consistency and the momentum going forward to get those wins on the scoreboard. And I think that it's really going to depend on whether Emerson Russell is back or not as to whether they run the football. But if they have to throw it, there could be a lot worse options than going for Nick Zielinski, Jackson Shuttlesworth, and some of the other weapons that they have at receiver. I think that Chelsea has to feel good about their chances in a team that's closer to their skill level than maybe we've seen in the past couple weeks against Thompson, against Pelham, against Vestavia Hills, and they should feel good about themselves coming into a decent chance to get a win. But Spain Park really does have the talent advantage, the momentum advantage over the Hornets, and I think that that's probably going to be what makes the difference here.
Yeah, so I take that as a Spain Park pick from you, and I lean the same way. This is a Chelsea team right now that's scoring 17.4 and giving up 35 points per game. When you're giving almost 20 points per game more than you're scoring, probably not going to lead to a lot of success. And they have played a difficult schedule. It's always tough in Class 7A Region 3, but this Spain Park team is so improved from where they've been, scoring 28.2 points per game. The offense is kind of starting to get those strides back, and it's a balanced offense versus one that's just an air raid or one that's just more pro-style in play action. And you're seeing that balance offensively, but the defense is what they lacked when they had that successful offense a few years ago. They had 3 or 4 years in a row where the offense could put up a lot of points, but the defense wasn't playing well. Now they've got it both, and the defense is back where you expect a Spain Park defense to be, and to me that's a big-time key going into this matchup. It's just going to be tough for Chelsea to score enough points in this game. And with Spain Park healthier on the offensive side of the ball, Brock Bradley, he's got those weapons that you mentioned, Jonathan Bibbs, Reggie Jackson. You've got the Shanks brothers back there, and now that you've had some guys that have had to step into those positions that also have experience, so now they've got some depth at those key roles. So when you add all that together, this is a Spain Park defense playing too well on both sides of the ball. I also think that they're going to walk away with the win, and they've got to have it with what's left the rest of the way. This is a team that is going to compete. It really may come down to, does Hoover lose another game the rest of the way? But Spain Park in a much better spot now. It's likely going to be Thompson, Hewitt, and Vestavia Hills in those top 3 spots, and then come down to a few of these teams battling for that 4th one. But Spain Park almost in a situation where they control their own destiny, but I think Hoover's also going to drop at least one more game the rest of the way. So the Jags sitting in good shape. They got to continue to take care of business, though, and that starts this week against Chelsea for their shot to make the playoffs. Another Class 7A Region 3 matchup is going to be the Thompson Warriors hitting the road to Herbmont Stadium as they take on the Oak Mountain Eagles this Friday. And this is a matchup, Andrew, of two teams heading in completely different directions right now. Thompson, after that loss to Clay Chalkville, bounces back in a huge way a week ago, 40-14 over Hewitt Trussville. That was a defense that was playing lights out, 7 points or less that they were giving up. Over their last 4 games, they had 7 for 3 in a row, and then they had a shutout going into that Thompson game. Thompson comes in and scores 40 points on them and outscores them 40-14. Also a good Hewitt offense that had been scoring a lot of points too. So just a dominant effort from the Warriors in that game. Oak Mountain, on the other hand, heading kind of in that opposite direction. It's a team that's 1-6 now, and last week was their worst showing of the season. The worst Hoover team in more than 20 years, and they give up 62 points and lose that game 62-14. And you look at this matchup, and it almost feels like, and you don't want to say it, but it almost feels like this is a game where Thompson can kind of name what score it wants to have, unless Oak Mountain just completely flips the switch and has a different attitude going into this game. And it's a tough one to have that switch flipped, knowing what's ahead. But when you look at that, you could almost go into it and say, hey, guys, we got nothing to lose. We're taking on one of the best teams in the country this week. Let's go out and let's have fun, and let's just see what we can do out here. And sometimes that could lead to a little bit of entertainment, but when you look at it on paper, Thompson right now definitely the better team.
Definitely, and I really don't think you can say otherwise, just coming off of what both of those teams did, not just last week, but in the previous weeks as well, building up into this. Oak Mountain just really struggling to get any sort of momentum going within region play, winless since that week 1 win against Northridge, and then Thompson just absolutely firing on all cylinders, especially last week against Hewitt Trussville. It's going to be a difficult one for Oak Mountain. They're obviously going to face a lot of struggles. I'd like to think of some of what happened last week was just Hoover waking up versus what Oak Mountain showed, simply because you don't go and allow 62 points to an offense that has looked that bad in what Hoover has shown. So I'd like to think that Hoover woke up a little bit last week and showed more of what they're capable of last week versus what Oak Mountain is this season, but Oak Mountain still struggling mightily this season, and I expect that to continue. I expect another Thompson win going this week.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's part of it. I think that Hoover, they've heard all the negativity, all the negative talk the last several weeks. They wanted to come out and make a statement, and they chose to do that against Oak Mountain. Like I said, I still think Hoover's got a loss or two left on their schedule too, but they were trying to make a statement, and you just hope that Oak Mountain can get a little bit of confidence back going into a game. And like I said, it's got to start with the fun side of it. Go out there, have fun. Let's see what can happen in a game like this, and the opportunity that you have to still play the game that you love on a Friday night against one of the best teams. You don't get that opportunity every week, but at the end of the day, you look at this Thompson team, Trent Seaburn continuing to impress, more than 300 yards passing last week against a very, very good defensive football team in Hewitt Trussville this season, and Thompson went out there and just put up points after points, and it's tough to see that not continuing this week against a defense in Oak Mountain that's given up 32 points per game, coming off a game in which they gave up 62 points. You got to feel like Thompson's going to come out, have success offensively, but also the way the defense bounced back from that Clay Chalkville loss. Like we said earlier in the show, like we said after that Clay Chalkville loss, this was a calm team after that game because they knew it's not going to get much more physical we're not going to get much more physical of an offensive line that we faced or as fast of a team as we faced against Clay Chalkville, and they shouldn't the rest of the way, and we saw that confidence kind of transform against the Hewitt Trussville team last week. I expect that to continue this week. I don't see Oak Mountain having enough firepower offensively. If they can churn some clock running the football and come out and put together a good defensive performance, they can keep this close for a while, but just not enough firepower to keep up with the talent that we'll see from Thompson this Friday night. The Warriors looking to remain atop the region standings. They sit there by themselves right now after last week's win against Hewitt Trussville. Despite their 28-24 loss last week to the Helena Huskies, a game in which was for the a battle for the top spot in the region standings at this point in the season, walked away impressed with Briarwood last week as they lose that game 28-24 on the road at Helena. But they led 21-14 at the half. They forced 4 turnovers. They blocked a kick. They did just about everything that they needed to do to win that football game, other than the fact that they turned the ball over 4 times too. So they matched what they were able to force by giving up that same number of turnovers, and that became costly at the end of the night. But Josh Thompson is light years ahead of where I thought he would be at this point in the season, grown tremendously as this season's gone along. Beyond that, you look at some of those receivers that are stepping up, Nick McNulty, as well as Sawyer Click playing big time, Cooper Higgins at the running back position. This is a Briarwood team that truly is, I think, the second best team in this region. Still some tough tests left on the schedule, but now they get a Calera team that's just been struggling so far this season, sitting at 0-6 overall. You got to feel like Briarwood's the better team heading into this matchup, especially the way that their defense is playing, going up against a Calera offense scoring just 10 points per game right now.
Definitely. It's that defense that's really going to make the difference in this matchup, because we've seen how Calera struggled against some of the other defenses within this region, and Briarwood arguably one of the best defenses in this region, but it's that offense. I've gotten to see some of the development over the season. You got your first chance to look at it last week and saw some of the stuff that I and some of the other people have been seeing so far this season, which is a very improved, almost ahead of schedule Briarwood team. But this is just a very solid Lions team all around that I think is going to come out here, make a big statement early, and then start to regroup and reassess themselves ahead of what's going to be a very tough run in for the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the matchup too, and this is a Briarwood team that's going to be looking to get back on track as well, and this isn't the spot where Calera probably wants them. Calera probably prefer them to come in off a win, maybe be a little bit distracted, but Briarwood's going to be focused this week. They know what's still ahead. They know they still have a chance to battle for one of those top two spots, really for that second place spot in this region, but they got to keep winning. And this is a week where their physicality and fundamental focus is going to really show up, in my opinion. And I assume you feel the same way, that Briarwood's going to walk away with the win here. And you just look at, like I said a minute ago, both offenses have struggled. Briarwood's only scored 17.8 points per game, but last week I think they took a monster step. I mean, you look at what they did against a very good Helena defense and putting up 24 points, but in being able to throw the football down the field like they did. Sawyer Click, like I said, made some big-time clutch plays late in that game. Nick McNulty with some big-time plays. This offense really has taken that next step, and you pair that with a defense that looks more like the Briarwood defenses of old, and that's got to be a positive thing when you look at this matchup, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think Briarwood showing what they could do against a top 10 team within Class 6A as a whole, what could be a team that makes a deep run into the playoffs, shows a lot about where Briarwood is right now, and I think that last week has to be more confidence building than anything else, despite the result. Although it's disappointing, Briarwood has to feel good about where they are coming into this point in the season versus where they maybe thought that they were, or at least we thought they were, going into the 2023 season. So I expect a pretty big Briarwood win here as they continue that momentum towards the playoffs. A couple of tough tests lurking, but I think that Briarwood is well equipped to face those challenges.
Yeah, and you look at it. I think that Calera's best chance here is to come out, make this lower scoring. But it's just going to be a tall challenge. They're a defense that's giving up 44.2 points per game right now. There's no way to hide that. And I think Briarwood, building off of what we saw from them offensively last week, going to come out, have a big night offensively, take advantage of a defense or an offense in Calera that's also not scoring enough at 10 points per game. Their defense and Briarwood playing too well right now. I expect Briarwood come in, set the statement early in this game, and really produce a big outcome as they look to battle for that 2 seed out of Class 6A Region 3. Sitting at 1-5, more than midway through the season now, you wouldn't really think that you've got a shot at the playoffs, Andrew, but as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, this is a Shelby County team that's still got a chance. They've still got some things to play for here, and they're taking on a 1-6 Selma team overall this season. This Friday night, this is a big game for them to keep those playoff hopes alive as they sit in this situation right now, and this is a game that they should win. You look at these two teams on paper, this is a Shelby County team that should be the better football team, specifically with the way their defense is playing right now, but still going to need to see those improvements from an offensive standpoint. When you look at this matchup, what do you see, and can the Wildcats pick up that key win that they need?
I see that Selma's had a lot of offensive struggles so far this year. Last week, their first win of the season, and prior to that, only scoring a touchdown or less in every single one of the games going into that matchup last week. And I think that this presents a great opportunity for that Shelby County defense to just come in, pitch a very low-scoring game on that side of the ball, and give the offense, as we've mentioned earlier games this season, their strategy of just being able to use the defense and get enough offensive production to get some wins, that's exactly the route for victory here. If they get a win in this game, they have a very good chance next week against Marbury and the rest of the teams around them. It's just really shaping up for a good chance for Shelby County to slide into one of those last two playoff spots within the region. Obviously, Demopolis and Holtville, easily the top two teams within this region, but beyond that, still wide open down at the bottom of the region.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely wide open, especially when you got two teams like this that are struggling this season but still battling for one of those playoff spots. But you nailed it. I mean, this is both these teams struggling to score points right now. You look at Shelby County, 11 points per game so far this season. Selma scoring 5.1 points per game. To me, that's all you need to hear right there. Even though Shelby County is struggling offensively, to be scoring 6 more points per game and only scoring 11 per game so far this season, you look at that, and that tells me that Selma shouldn't score very many points, especially going up against the Shelby County defense that has played well. They're giving up 26, and that may sound like a little bit of a high number, but you got to keep in mind they've played some good football teams, and they've been on the field a lot. And despite that, in the games where they've played offenses that have struggled, they've played well defensively, and I expect that to be the key difference in that game. Like you said, Selma scored more than 8 points for the first time this season in their 22-14 win over Marbury. So if Shelby County can win this one and win this one by a couple of scores, you got to feel really good about their chances against Marbury, and then the playoff picture really starts to open up for them as a potential team that could get back to the postseason this year. But got to come out focused this week. The offense is still going to have to take strides. Defense, though, is going to give you your chance to be able to win this game by a couple of scores. I think that's the big difference here for the Shelby County Wildcats as they look for that big region win this Friday. Montevallo's magic continued last week, Andrew. Second week in a row that they pick up a 21-20 victory, and now they use that confidence going into a massive matchup this week against Bibb County on the road. And when you look at Montevallo so far this season, quietly sitting at 5-1 overall, and the way we've kind of talked about them, you would probably feel like they're not quite as good as that. But it's a team that continues to find ways in very close football games. And this week, if they want to win this one, it's probably going to come in another close game because I don't see them being able to pull away from a Bibb County team that's very, very talented, sitting at 6-1 overall, 4-0 in the region, the favorites to win the region championship, especially after beating American Christian earlier in the season. So Montevallo going to need to use that momentum that they've got from those close games to likely be able to pull off another win this week. But this is a very good Bibb County team. Do you see a shot for Montevallo to win? And if so, what are going to be the keys in order to make that happen?
I see a shot just because of what they showed last week against Sipsey Valley. I kind of went out on a ledge last week and picked Montevallo to win that game, but you obviously outlined last week. That was a very good Sipsey County team, especially a talented offensive team. And Montevallo, by and large, shut that down, and they really showed up in a very gritty win for the second straight week. And I think that that's really their path to go forward in the to the playoffs because they've got two very challenging tests left in Bibb County and American Christian still left on that schedule. And Bibb County, obviously very talented offensively, scoring 31.1 points per game. Montevallo as an offense likely can't outscore that. It's going to need to come off the defense this week. And based off of what we've seen so far, you can't count out that Montevallo defense against anybody. This is a very good and very talented unit that's going to be favored, at least on that side of the ball, in a lot of the matchups that they face this season.
So do you think Montevallo can do what they need to do? Can the defense make this game close enough for the offense to have that chance late like they did last week, converting 3 fourth down conversions on their final drive to eventually punch it in the end zone for that 21-20 win? Can they have that similar success on offense late to be able to make enough plays?
I think they're going to be in a similar situation. I don't expect similar results. I think that this has the potential to be very close in the second half, give Montevallo a chance to win, but this is a Bibb County team that's top 10 in Class 4A, a very good team just all around, and I think that ultimately makes the difference. The talent and the consistency that Bibb County has shown over the last few years. This is a team that Montevallo historically has struggled to beat. I expect that to be the case again this week.
Yeah, it would be a program win here. This would be a huge win if they can walk away with a victory against Bibb County. But you look at it, if Montevallo is going to have their chance, like you said, it's the defense. The defense has got to come out and play the game of the year in this game on Friday night, because this is a Bibb County team that's given up 27 or less in every game this season and 21 or less in all but one game. So if you think about it that way, Montevallo probably not going to score more than 20, 21 points in this game. They're probably going to be held more around the 14-point mark or a little bit less. So that means your defense has to be in for a slugfest of a football game in this matchup. But if their defense can come in and hold this Bibb County team to 21 or less in this matchup, give themselves a chance, Montevallo is sitting in a good situation in those tight games. A team that could easily be 2-4 right now in Montevallo. They now have 3 consecutive games that they've won that have been decided by 3 points or less, and 4 of their 6 games this season have been decided by 3 points or less. They've gone on to win a few of those, which has made a big difference for them right now. Obviously, sitting at 5-1, they've only lost one of those close games. So if they're in that situation, you got to feel good about Braxton King, Rosario Conwell, Javon Rogers being able to make some of those big-time plays. But what they really, really need, not only do they need that defense to come out and play well, but they need to have a big offensive play early. They can get a 7-0 lead, a 13-14-0 lead in a game like this, and then tell your defense to go to work and play the biggest game they've ever played. That gives you a little bit more of a comfort level, a little bit more confidence, because otherwise it's going to be a tough, tough task to be able to pick up a win in this one. Still some challenges left, but I just want to see that confidence continue to build for this team moving forward. I think the defense can keep them in this football game. Ultimately, though, I think Bibb County just a little bit too much success offensively. Montevallo not going to be able to score enough to be able to match that at the end of the night. I think Bibb County going to win a good football game that Montevallo is going to be in for a while, but ultimately late in this one, I think Bibb County able to score enough to be able to pull away. A big bounce-back win for the Vincent Yellow Jackets last week as they pick up a 33-20 victory against Ramburn. And coming off 2 straight losses, Andrew, they needed that win in a big way. This is a team that was starting to lose a little bit of confidence, I think, but now they get it back. And I thought that game could test them a little bit last week, and they're able to fight through that, get that confidence back that they're needing. And now they go into this matchup on Friday night against Woodland, and they got to be feeling a lot better. But they've got 2 big games after this. They've got Isabella and Thorsby left on the schedule, likely going to determine seeding in the playoffs for this region. And this is their best chance to win the rest of the way. I still think they're going to have a great chance to win both of those last 2, but they need to continue to get that confidence going back in the right direction against a Woodland team that they really should be able to beat in this matchup.
Definitely, and I think that they can really take advantage of that to build that momentum in going into those 2 crucial games left in the season, because I think that last week's win was really big in terms of confidence building. I think that now once you got that win, snap that back-to-back losing streak, I think that they could get right back on track very easily and start rolling against the Woodland team that they should beat on paper. Obviously, still a lot of great playmakers within this team, and the way that they were able to win with the running game last week gives me a lot of confidence about this team's identity going forward. Still some very good passing plays to be made on this offense, and this defense has looked absolutely stout this season for Vincent. I expect another win similar to last week, run-driven, defense-driven, but ultimately by a bigger margin than what we saw last week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you look at this team, and that's kind of become their identity, which is a good thing to know. You want to know what your identity is, especially when you're at this point in the season battling for a spot in the playoffs. And this is a Vincent team that has become that team that physically, defensively, they're a really good football team, and that's kind of what they're hanging their hats on. And then they got that strong run game, and we saw it from several guys last week, really the last couple of weeks. Obviously, Aiden Poe with the big game last week, running the football, had an explosive big play that really made a difference in that game. And then Raquelis Robertson been the consistent running back there for the Yellow Jackets as well. But in this matchup, you look at it specifically, this is a Woodland team that's scoring 14.8 points per game. Well, that feeds right into Vincent's hands, who's given up 15 points per game on the defensive side. So I don't see Woodland scoring a lot of points, sitting at 2-4 right now, going up against a Vincent team, playing good football, 3-1 in region play, still control their own destiny when it comes to getting that 2 seed. Vincent's got a ton to play for right now, and too good on both sides of the football right now, scoring 30, giving up 15. This team should come out, play with that confidence and that momentum that they got back last week, and really gain some more steam going into those big final 2 games of region play against Isabella and Thorsby that will decide likely the 2, 3, and 4 seed out of this region. So a big week for the Vincent Yellow Jackets to keep that momentum and that confidence as they move forward into the final stretch here of region play. Now we jump down to the AISA and the ACSC, all 3 teams once again in action as they've been busy this year, playing just about every week of the season so far. And we've got 3 matchups to touch on in this game. You look at Cornerstone in a big matchup against Meadowview, and then Coosa Valley at Abbeville Christian and Evangel at Southern Christian, or hosting Southern Christian after their trip up to Franklin, Tennessee. And you look at these 3 teams and where they are, Andrew. What are you looking for in these matchups? Who's going to walk away victorious in each of these 3 games on Friday?
Well, I think for Evangel, we're obviously looking for a big question. Do they finish the season undefeated? They're 1 win away from getting a perfect regular season, and is the last game standing in their way? Obviously, a big win last week against Franklin Christian. 1 versus 2 matchup. Teams that we could see face each other again in the national playoffs come later this year. I think that gives them all the confidence in the world that they can go out and beat just about anybody. And with Southern next, I expect another Evangel win as they go and secure that perfect regular season record. And for Cornerstone, I'm looking for them to continue that momentum that they showed last week against Trinity, a 56-0 shutout against Trinity last week. After a couple more gritty games for Cornerstone, having to come from behind in both those games before eventually pulling away in the past couple of weeks. But I think that really just built a lot of confidence for Cornerstone, especially throwing the ball like they did last week, being able to show that they aren't just a running team, but they are a great passing team as well. I expect another Cornerstone win, building towards what could be a perfect season going into the playoffs, which is incredible for the Chargers this year. And as for Coosa Valley, they were shut out in this game last year and lost a lot of momentum last week against Crenshaw. Had a big play towards the end of that game against a very good team out of the AISA, but this is still going to be an incredibly difficult matchup for Coosa Valley. Still need to start putting the pieces together if they want to get a win before the season is out. I expect an Abbeville Christian win in this matchup.
Yeah, I tend to land on all 3, the same page with all 3 of those matchups. You look at Cornerstone taking on an 0-7 Meadowview team. This team just playing too good right now. They're playing good football on both sides of the ball, and they just kind of become that dominant team and really built off of what they started last year in their first year in 8-man play, and they've had success with it. And going into the playoffs, they're going to be a confident bunch that could compete for a state championship after falling short of an appearance in that game a season ago. As for Evangel, last week was their big challenge. Taking on Franklin Christian, they win that one, a tight football game. The rest of the way, they should be in good shape as they close out the regular season with Southern. I think they win big in this one, gain some confidence going into their playoff run and to the postseason. And then Coosa Valley, it's just been too much of an offensive struggle so far this season. I think that continues. We just haven't seen them be able to put up any points so far. They've scored 6 or less in all but one game and 20 or less in every game so far this season. And this is you look at last week, 56-6 and a loss to Crenshaw, just no confidence there on the offensive side of the football, and that's what they've got to be able to gain to pick up a win against Abbeville Christian. That said, Abbeville's struggling. So this is their best shot at a win. 1-6 Abbeville, scoring 11 points per game, giving up 43.3, just lost 64-0. So if Coosa Valley's going to win one, it's going to be this week against Abbeville. We'll see if they're able to come out, take advantage of a matchup like that. So that takes care of our AISA and ACSC matchups this week as all 3 teams look to pick up a win on Friday night. Now it's time to hand out some stars as we hit our SCR Stars of the Week segment, and another big week of region play. It's been one of my favorite weeks of the season, to be honest with you, so far from what we saw this past week, and some big games with not only playoff implications on the line, but also the shot at winning a region championship. And we saw Helena and Thompson step up in big ways, and we're going to name a couple of those players as our stars of the week here in just a second, and then a big list of honorable mentions as well. But Andrew, we'll start with you, let you hand out your 2 stars, and then I'll get mine in as well.
So I think my first star of the week goes to a player I saw last week, Colby Hearn, wide receiver out of Thompson, just completely took over that game with Trent Seaburn behind him at quarterback. He's really stepped up as a big-name receiver within the state for these Thompson Warriors, and I'm excited to continue seeing him as the season goes on. In arguably one of the biggest games of the season, he goes for 3 touchdowns, 182 receiving yards, an absolutely phenomenal standout day for Hearn. Within a great receiving core, he's arguably stepped up as the name to watch within that. College coaches better start looking out because Hearn is going to be a problem at the next level as well. So Colby Hearn, my first star of the week, and then another great receiver who will likely be great at the next level as well gets my second star of the week, and that's Javon Rogers out of Montevallo. We've been looking for this Bulldogs offense to start showing itself in the passing game, and specifically to Rogers, one of the top talents that we've seen at the receiver position so far this season. And we absolutely got that last week. 10 receptions, 150 yards, and a touchdown for the Montevallo standout, just putting up absolutely phenomenal numbers, and was one of the keys to victory last week against Sipsey Valley. Arguably one of the reasons that Montevallo is still in the playoff hunt now is because of that win against Sipsey Valley and because of Rogers' performance against that team.
Yeah, he was big, and that's, like you said, we've been waiting to see that. He's had some flashes. He's had some games where he's had 1 or 2 receptions for 80 or 100 yards, but we hadn't seen that game where he's had, like you said, 10 receptions, and you see what's possible when he does, going for 150 and a touchdown there. And Colby Hearn's done it back-to-back weeks now where he's had big-time showings, and that gives my first star of the week somebody big to look for in the passing game, and that's freshman quarterback Trent Seaburn at Thompson. And going up against that Hewitt defense that I talked about earlier that had given up 7 or less in 4 straight, 7 in 3 straight, and then a shutout going into that game against Thompson, he comes out and throws for 358 on 23 of 30 and has 3 touchdown passes. So just another day of work for him as he goes out and dominates one of the best defenses that we've seen so far this season, one of the best defenses they've seen as well, and a dominant showing there for Trent Seaburn. Another guy that I think we've mentioned just about probably every week, but he's been one of our overall stars just about every week too, and that's Jordan Washington, and he stepped up in a big way. He was gassed a lot of that second half because he toted the ball 39 times, and he took advantage of all 39 carries, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns running the football, but he also had a reception touchdown early in that game of 24 yards as well. So 3 total touchdowns, almost 250 all-purpose yards in that game for the Helena Huskies, and they needed every bit of it as they win a thrilling 28-24 victory against the Briarwood Lions and take that top spot in the region standing. So you look at those players of the week right there. Montevallo keeps their playoff hopes alive because Javon Rogers in his big game. The 2 Thompson players, they give themselves first place in the region at this point in the season late in the game. That's huge. And Jordan Washington, the same thing. He steps up for the Huskies and puts Helena atop the region standings. With only 2 region games left, Helena is sitting in a very, very good situation right now. So that takes us to our honorable mention portion of the SCR Stars of the Week. We start right here at Spain Park, and I want to start with their defense, and it's a defense that we expected to get back to what we saw early in the season, and they did just that, giving up just 14 points to Tuscaloosa County on the road, had 2 fumble recoveries, an interception, and they looked healthy. And that's the key, that when they're healthy this year, they're going to be dangerous, and they're going to pair it with a very good offense as well. On the offensive side, though, Reggie Jackson was back, and you mentioned him earlier in the show. When he's out there, that gives you a different dynamic. He had a ton of success. He scored on the opening kickoff and went 97 yards, also had 35-yard touchdown on a reverse, had almost 200 yards all-purpose in that game for the Spain Park Jaguars. So a great night for Reggie Jackson, which opens things up more for Brock Bradley, the Shanks brothers at running back, and also Jonathan Bibbs out wide at receiver as well. From that Briarwood-Helena game, a couple of Briarwood players I want to mention. Josh Thompson, he stepped up, and he had a couple of interceptions in that game, did have 2 interceptions, but 225 yards and a touchdown passing for the Lions, and he made clutch throw after clutch throw to give them a chance there in the second half. A big-time showing from him, and then that Ben McNulty, one of his top targets, 110 receiving yards, with a touchdown. That's what they need. They've been missing that so far this season to have that consistent threat. Now they've got him and Sawyer Click and Cooper Higgins who can run the football and catch the football. That's a dangerous threat for this Briarwood team moving forward. On the other side of that, Nate Thomason stepped up in a big way. He was flying to the football all night for Helena against Briarwood. He had an interception, the game-winning interception there on a tip pass late, and then recovered a fumble and had several tackles in that matchup for the Huskies as well, as he continues to be a statement player there at the linebacker position for the Helena Huskies. And out at Montevallo, they pick up that big win. We talked about Javon Rogers a second ago, but Rosario Conwell continuing to play well, kind of like Jordan Washington. 30 carries, 130 yards, and a touchdown. He was a workhorse for them running the football. And Braxton King continuing to get more and more confidence at the quarterback position. You talked about Javon Rogers having 150 yards. Well, guess what? King only threw for 167, so most of that went to Javon Rogers. So it's good to see him step up in that situation as King finished with 167 yards, 2 touchdowns passing, also had 42 rushing yards in that victory as well. Nick Solinsky, we talked about him earlier in the show at Chelsea, 138 yards on 8 receptions against a very good 7A Vestavia defense. That's what impressed me the most about that game and his performance as it came against one of the best defenses that we've seen this year as Chelsea put up 21 points in that one. And Aiden Poe, normally a wideout, he stepped into the running back position on a couple of plays this week. He had a 97-yard run at one point that went for a touchdown, finished with 139 yards and 2 touchdowns on 9 carries for the Yellow Jackets. Just another weapon that they've got out there on that offensive side of the football for Vincent. And they've got a big one this week as they look to continue their confidence. So a lot of SCR Stars there this past week. Expect that to continue to grow each and every week from here on out as we've got key game after key game left in region play here the next 3 weeks. Well, Andrew, that brings another show to a close. So we just talked about, obviously, all the things that we saw last week. Now we've got another big week ahead, a Thursday night game for Pelham that's going to have some big-time playoff implications there. We've got our game of the week right here at Spain Park as the Jags host the Chelsea Hornets. And we've got some other big ones, Montevallo, Vincent, Shelby County, all these teams playing in big-time games this week with region playoff implications on the line. What are you looking forward to most when we hit the field this Thursday or Friday night?
I'm looking forward on Thursday night to seeing what Pelham's going to do against a very challenging Ben Russell team. I expect this team to show up in a big situation, but it's not going to be easy for them. This is one of the biggest tests they have remaining, and I expect it to be a great competitive football game. I'm interested to see what both the offense and defense do against Ben Russell.
Yeah, all the way around, it's going to be a great week of high school football action right here in Shelby County. But that first game that you just talked about, and it's not going to be in this county. It's going to be a little bit away as they go down to Ben Russell near Alex City, but that's a huge game. Pelham has to win that football game. I'm excited to see how they come out early in that game and what they look like. Is that moment going to be too big for them, or are they going to handle it well? I think they're going to handle it well. This is a team that's got a lot of key experience in the right positions, and their head coach is bought into his players. The players bought into him. This is a team that I think is special this year and really, really wants this. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. A night later, it's going to be a lot of fun, too, as we got several big matchups that we just talked about. So we appreciate you for tuning in this week. We'll see you all on Friday night as we do our Facebook Live pregame show. I will hopefully be back. I appreciate Andrew handling it by himself last week. Did a great job. I'll hopefully be back this week as one of us will be at the Thompson Oak Mountain game just down the road here from Spain Park, the other right here at Spain Park for this big showdown, a 280 area football team. So going to be a busy week. We appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday night.